Good afternoon. I'm Spot on Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and welcome to my latest Teleconnections discussion here on the 27th of October, 2025. All right, so let's go ahead and start by taking a look at the Northern Hemisphere, and let's take a look at the shortwave troughs and ridges across this Northern Hemisphere as of today, the 27th of October, 2025. We see the blue colors and the green colors. Before I begin, blue and green colors, think of upper level troughs, unsettled weather conditions, and cooler than average temperatures. Whenever you see the light browns and these orange colors, that indicates upper level ridges. And beneath upper level ridges, we typically see fair weather, drier conditions, and also milder temperatures. So starting with a look here across the Northern Hemisphere today on the 27th of October, 2025, we see an upper level trough over northwestern Russia with an upper level ridge generally located just downstream from that trough across north central Russia with a ridge. Downstream from the ridge, we see an closed upper level low in trough over southeastern Russia. There's an upper level ridge across the northwestern Pacific Ocean. Basically, the ridge axis is extending from the southeast toward the northwest across the northwestern Pacific. We see upper level closed lows and troughing, the green coloring here, blue coloring across the Arctic on the Pacific side. And we also see a closed upper level low there in the Bering Sea with the trough axis extending to the southeast into the northeastern Pacific Ocean. Upper level ridging is located across parts of southeastern Canada up towards the southern Hudson Bay. We additionally have an upper level trough parked across the southwestern portions of Canada into the U.S. Pacific Northwest coast. A weak closed upper level low and associated trough is located from Arkansas extending southward into Louisiana. And we do see another closed upper level low and troughing from Maine extending down the coastal sections of the mid-Atlantic. Across the North Atlantic today, we see upper level ridging extending into the North Atlantic itself with a closed upper level low beneath the upper level ridging just to the west of Portugal. And then finally, we see a fairly deep trough across parts of northern Europe, extending down into central portions of Europe, and even in this eastern Europe, we see troughing for today with this purple coloring here across the European area. And we do see upper level ridging just to its east across far northwestern Siberia. So there you have it. That's a breakdown of the upper air patterns. These are shortwave troughs and ridges. We are looking at the 500 millibar height level, which is about 18,000 feet above mean sea level. Now let's turn our attention to the Madden-Julian oscillation, MJO phases, and the areas of enhanced convection. The MJO runs from phases 1 through phase 8, and you notice phase 8 and 1. 8 is there off the west coast of South Africa, while MJO phase 1 is off the east coast of South Africa there around the vicinity of Madagascar for phase 1. Whenever the MJO is in phases 2 and 3, that means we have enhanced vertical air motion, rising air, and convection across the tropical Indian Ocean. Whenever the MJO is in phases 4 and 5, that means we have enhanced rising air motion and convection across the maritime continent of Australia. And in the MJO, if it's in phases 6, 7, that's generally indicative of rising air motion and convection across the tropical western Pacific. And finally, MJO phase 8 is rising air motion and convection there just along to the east of the international date line at 180 degrees west longitude. Here is the latest temperature composites. I'm keeping September, October, and November in here one more time. I think next week's Teleconnections discussion, I'm going to switch the temperature composites, and you're going to see changes to these phases when I switch these composites next week. But once we get into November, I'll flip it over to the October, November, December temperature composites for the MJO. We're looking right now, late October, where would we typically see cooler than average temperatures across the eastern U.S.? That would be in phase 5, and then into phase 6 from New England down to the mid-Atlantic. Phase 7, we go milder across the eastern U.S. 8 is a milder look. Phase 1 is a milder look in the eastern U.S. And then phase 2, cool it back down. Blue coloring, cooler than normal temperatures in the eastern U.S. for MJO phase 2. MJO phase 3 is getting closer to average. as well as MJO phase 4. So let's see where we're at right now. Again, why do we look at these temperature composites? Because the orange and the yellow, brighter colors indicate above normal temperatures. The blue colors indicate below normal temperatures. And each of these different MJO phases, believe it or not, where the air rises in the tropical Indian and tropical Pacific Ocean, where that air rises and where that air sinks, it really has an impact downrange or downstream from this rising or sinking air motion. There's these vertical cells of air motion, and it has impacts on the temperature patterns and where the upper level ridges and where these upper level troughs set up. So let's take a look at the latest forecast here on the right. The Jeffs V12, this is running out to the 10th of November. And the black line kind of shows us where we've been. So back on the 12th of October, we came out into MJO phase 1. And then the 16th to 18th of October, we were in MJO phase 2. The 18th to about the 21st of October, we were in MJO phase 3. And then we went into MJO phase 4. And now this red line is the new forecast showing us going into MJO phase 5. We're heading into MJO phase 5 between today, the 27th, and the 30th, before we rotate right on into the null inner circle here, the null phase, around Halloween to the 2nd of November. But then the Jeffs V12 shows the MJO coming back out into phase 6 between the 6th and the 10th of November. We look at the CFS V2 extended bias corrected on the left, the MJO forecast. It's showing the MJO forecast here, the red line, showing us going in from phase 4 to MJO phase 5 by the 29th. And we're definitely just barely weekly in the MJO phase 5 there on Halloween, the 31st of October. And then we work our way on out into MJO phase 6. In the middle, we see the ECMWF, the European MJO forecast, showing us going into phase 5 today. And we stay at MJO phase 5, although there is a little bit of a weakening signal here as this red line crashes back into the null phase, the small inner circle, by the 30th and 31st. And then right on through the 10th of November, we remain in the null phase here. There are some of these yellow lines indicate some of the ensemble members, some of the forecast members coming out into MJO phase 6 with the European model. So we'll have to watch that. Finally, Bureau of Meteorology model, the BOM extended model, Australian here on the right, showing the MJO coming into phases 5, working its way into the null phase, all the way from 29th and 31st Halloween, coming back around, remaining in the null phase all the way to the 10th of November, before re-emerging into weak phase 5, before MJO rotates back into phase 6. Looking at the latest water temperature anomalies across the Northern Hemisphere oceans, first of all, I want to mention for the ENSO update, we are seeing a daily Southern Oscillation Index, SOI, value of positive 23.23 today. So a pretty significant positive trend to the daily SOI. Anything above a positive 7 with the SOI generally indicates that we have a La Nina in place. And, Southern Oscillation Index, what we're looking at is the comparison of sea level pressures between Tahiti and Darwin, Australia. We look at the water temperature anomalies across these northern hemisphere ocean waters. Across the Pacific, we see well above normal water temperatures in the north central Pacific to the northwest of the Hawaiian Islands. We see above normal water temperatures continuing into the Sea of Japan, right on down south of Korea, basically between South Korea and Taiwan, well above normal water temperatures. Above normal water temperatures across the areas east of the Philippines, tropical Pacific waters there are running above normal as well. We see above normal water temperatures as well into the Bering Sea and west of the Alaskan area. And we see some below normal water temperatures in the blue color showing up in the Gulf of Alaska, as well as parts of the northwestern Pacific, just to the south of the Kamchatka Peninsula. And we also see below normal water temperatures in association with the La Nina across. And you notice this, where are the greatest below normal water temperatures, the darker blue showing up? They're not right off the South American coast. They are further to the west. And so I will break these Nino regions down 1, 3, 3.4, and 4 here momentarily, kind of show you what it looks like. We do see above normal water temperatures as well across Hudson Bay and off the southeastern coast of Canada. Looking at the ENSO intensity classifications, these are the categories: weak, moderate strength, strong, and neutral. Right now, we are in the weak La Nina territory, running between 0.5 and 0.9 degrees Celsius. Look at the entire areas here of the Nino region. You have Nino 1+2 box immediately off the coast of South America. Between the equator and 10 degrees south latitude is 1+2 region. The Nino 3 region is a little bit further to the west along the equator across the eastern tropical Pacific. Then you have Nino 3.4 region, which has got this darker line, this rectangle box, or rectangular area here, Nino 3.4. And then we have finally have Nino 4, which is further out west, right around the 180 degree west longitude line. So let's take a look. I'm breaking the different Nino regions down here, okay? Looking at the Nino index. So right now, upper left, I'm showing you the blue line represents how the water temperatures have changed in the Nino 1+2 box, the upper left here. Nino 1+2, again, is right here off the immediate coast of South America from 0 degrees latitude or the equator down to 10 degrees south latitude. And notice what my value is here. My latest value on the Nino index is minus 0.658 C degrees Celsius. So we've seen a little bit of warming lately between mid-October and 27 October. So a little bit of the warming of the waters in the Nino 1+2 box. So generally we're looking at this being the warmest area, the Nino 1+2 box. We look at the upper right, I'm now moving west towards the Nino 3 box. So now we're taking a look at the water temperature anomalies right in this area, the Nino 3 area. And what are they looking like? We're at minus 1.12 degrees Celsius. So we noticed this drop off recently, the last week or so, in these water temperature anomalies, cooling waters in that Nino 3 box here. See this? And so our value is actually, this is the coolest value in that Nino 3 box. We look at Nino 3.4 index. We're generally maintaining similar temperatures over the last couple of weeks. We're at minus 1.064 degrees Celsius in Nino 3.4. And then finally, the Nino 4 index, that Nino 4 box, we're at minus 0.778 degrees Celsius. So I like to look at and see where the coolest water temperature anomalies are occurring when we're dealing with La Nina. And right now, the coolest area, the coolest water temperature anomalies are showing up generally right here in the Nino 3 box. And now Nino 3.4 is the second coolest right behind it. So we look at, let me go back here, sorry. All right, when we go back to this, Nino 3.4 is the second coolest area. So coolest, second coolest. So that tells me, in general, what we're looking at here is we have our coolest water temperature anomalies between Nino 3 back towards Nino 3.4, right in here, okay? We look at the latest quasi-biennial oscillation QBO update. QBO continues to be in an easterly descending phase, which that tends to favor, you see the blue solid line here. This is from a radio sound observation. We're looking at the zonal winds in meters per second. And whenever we have a QBO in an easterly phase, that means we have easterly winds in the stratosphere above the equator. And you say to yourself, why in the world does that matter to my weather? Well, if you live in the United States or across the mid-latitudes as a whole, this QBO, there's been research done that says that the QBO can have impacts on the mid-latitude pattern of the jet stream, the storm tracks, as well as the behavior, the strength of the stratospheric polar vortex. So that's why we look at this QBO, and we're in the easterly phase. And what does that mean? An easterly phase QBO favors a weaker wintertime stratospheric polar vortex, and a negative phase is the NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation. And so that's generally why we look at it. Now let's move on to the teleconnections, the other teleconnections. Let's look at the AO, the Arctic Oscillation forecast. I show this every week just to kind of break it down. A negative AO tends to result in more of a large dip in the jet stream, which allows much colder Arctic air to filter into the upper Midwest and East Coast with a negative AO. We got this cross-polar flow, these magenta pink arrows, from Siberia across into the northern hemisphere, or I'm sorry, into North America, excuse me. So from Siberia to North America, we have cross-polar flow setting up with a negative AO, the coldest air in the Midwest and the eastern U.S. Notice with the negative AO, it tends to be warmer and drier from California up through Oregon and Washington State. And we also tend to see a stronger and more persistent upper level ridge into the Gulf of Alaska and Northeast Pacific. Now we look over here on the right, this is a positive AO, and now things have changed. We have more of a west to east jet stream across the northern U.S. We get these areas of low pressure, these L's to basically move west to east. We get milder air, very dry conditions across California into Arizona. We also get more of the downsloping flow off the Rockies into the southern plains where it's milder and drier than normal. Generally, we have milder pattern and more of a west to east polar jet stream when we have a positive AO. The Arctic, the polar vortex is much stronger than average and tends to keep all the Arctic air up over the North Pole. Here's a European EPS AO 50 perturb member forecast out through 11 November. We're looking at a slightly positive AO through about the 28th of October tomorrow. Then we go down to a slightly negative AO. From the 29th right on to about the 2nd of November, we have a slightly negative AO. And then we go slightly positive to neutral right on through the rest of the period to 11 November. European EPS AO 50 perturb member forecast, 46-day forecast out beyond 6 December, showing a slightly positive AO today, and it's going to remain slightly positive through tomorrow, the 28th of October, turning negative from 29 October to 3 November, then slightly positive again from 4 to the 15th of November, followed by neutral to slightly negative AO the rest of the period from 16 November right on to 2 December. We look at the NOAA Jeffs V12 AO 30 perturb member forecast, showing a slightly positive AO, similar to the other two that we looked at. Slightly positive today and tomorrow, the 28th of October, transitioning to negative, however, from 29 October through the 2nd of November. And then we go neutral conditions, follow the green line here, neutral conditions to slightly positive from 3 to 12 November. Turning our attention to the North Atlantic Oscillation NAO forecast, with a negative NAO on the left, we see a very strong blocking high across the North Atlantic up into Greenland. On both sides of the strong blocking high, we have a deep trough digging into the eastern U.S. and another deep trough digging into portions of Europe with a negative NAO like this. On the other hand, when we have a positive NAO here on the right, we see more of a west to east polar jet stream. The coldest Arctic air is maintained up over the North Pole, tends to remain in that location. We get milder Pacific air with a west to east jet stream from the west to the east coast of the United States. We have a stronger North Atlantic jet stream as well with a positive NAO. And we get milder air into southern as well as central Europe. Looking at the European EPS NAO 50 perturb member forecast through the 11th of November, we see a slightly positive phase of the NAO through 29 October. Then we turn negative from 30 October to 2 November with the NAO. Then we go back slightly positive from 2 right on out to 11 November. Looking at the European EPS NAO 50 perturb member forecast, 46-day forecast beyond 6 December, showing a slightly positive phase of the NAO through 28 October, and then the NAO shifts negative from 29 October, a little bit longer negative on the 50 perturb member 46-day forecast from the EPS. It keeps it negative to 7 November, the NAO, before turning neutral from 8 to the 24th of November, and then going slightly negative again with the NAO from 25 November to 2 December. Looking at the NOAA Jeffs V12 NAO 30 perturb member forecast, showing a slightly positive NAO through 29 October, transitioning to negative from 30 October to 2 November, then slightly positive again from 3 to 5 November, and then we go back towards neutral on the 6th of November, right in this area, and then we go back to slightly positive with the NAO for the remainder of the period through the 12th of November. Looking at the Pacific North American PNA forecast, the big differences here is a positive PNA on the left, showing upper level troughing and colder than normal temperatures, more unsettled in the eastern U.S., With a positive PNA, we see a strong upper level ridge, specifically up into western Canada, up towards Alaska. So we see upper level ridging there and drier and milder than normal temperatures. If we flip it over now to a negative PNA here on the bottom right, we see the purple colors indicating upper level troughing below average temperatures over the western portions of Canada and the US. And we see above average temperatures and upper level ridging across the southeast up towards the mid-Atlantic. So what's our forecast for the European EPS PNA 50 per term member forecast out to 11 November, showing a slightly negative PNA through the 28th through tomorrow, the 28th of October. Then we go strongly positive with the PNA. Look how far up these green lines go up, right? Here's the values on this y-axis over here. So we're going up to a positive 3 type PNA. That's pretty significant there around Halloween. That's where it reaches its peak positive point, and then it comes back down towards neutral conditions around 3 and 4 November before it becomes positive again from 5 to 9 November. And yeah, so a lot of the green line you're seeing on this forecast, the EPS 50 per term member 15-day forecast shows a positive to neutral PNA. Now, if you look at the European EPS PNA 50 per term member forecast, showing a neutral PNA around the 28th of October, right on through 28 October, then that strongly positive tendency of the PNA from 29 October, right on through early November, about 3 November, strongly positive, then kind of gets closer to the neutral line again as we get closer to 10, 11 November, and then it turns slightly negative with the PNA. From 10 to 24 November before becoming neutral. Looking at the NOAA Jeffs V12 PNA 30 per term member forecast, we have a strongly positive PNA. Look at this thing. Very similar to the EPS European ensemble, up to a positive 3 value with the PNA, reaching its peak around Halloween. And then we see that green line kind of dive down a little bit closer to the zero neutral line from 4 to 12 November. The green line's kind of just flirting around with the zero line here, the neutral territory. Looking at the Eastern Pacific Oscillation EPO forecast, negative EPO on the left, strong upper level ridging into the Gulf of Alaska and northeastern Pacific. This diverts the storm track. This purple line indicates the jet stream. This is the general storm track. The storm's going to follow this purple line, have to go up and over this big, huge ridge there across the northeastern Pacific. And then we got a troughing to the southeast of the Hawaiian Islands with a negative EPO. So we have a upper high, higher than normal heights over upper low, lower than normal heights across the eastern Pacific. That's why we call it a negative EPO, because this is the reverse of what we'd expect. You see what happens in the negative EPO. We get a strong Arctic high. We get very cold Arctic air to come down into the northern plains and to the east coast. With a positive EPO, on the other hand, we got a stronger area, upper low pressure there, upper level low across the northeastern Pacific, and we have higher than normal heights beneath it to the south there from Hawaiian Islands westward along that latitude line. We do see milder Pacific air as well coming into the U.S. from the west to the east coast with a positive EPO, with all the coldest air pretty much locked up over Greenland, up over towards the North Pole. Let's look at the forecast now. European EPS EPO 50 per term member forecast out to 11 November, showing a positive phase of the EPO through 3 November. And in fact, it gets very strongly positive, the EPO, according to this model, up to a positive 4 value around the 1st to 2nd of November. Then it starts coming back down. Follow the green line here, the average of all the ensembles here, the green line. It gets closer to neutral around the 4th of November. Then the EPO goes back more strongly positive again from 5 to 11 November. The European EPS EPO 50 per term member forecast 46 days out into the future beyond 6 December shows a strongly positive EPO through the 16th of November. I mean, you see these two peaks here very much on the positive side. And we remain positive all the way out to about the 16th of November. And then we become neutral with the EPO from 17 to 26 November before becoming slightly negative into early December. And finally, the NOAA Jeffs V12 EPO 30 member forecast going out to 12 November shows a positive phase of the EPO through about the 3rd. Look at that. Look how strongly positive the EPO gets the 1st and 2nd in November again. And then it drops down closer to neutral there on 4 and 5 November. Then turns a little bit more positive again from 6 to 9 November. And then it goes back down towards the 0 line here, towards neutral territory. Now, let's take a look at the latest stratospheric polar vortex forecast. This is courtesy of, this is from the Net Weather TV website. So over here on the upper left, I have current stamped on this upper left graphic. And just know that these solid white lines are isoheights, lines of equal geopotential height at 30 millibars in the atmosphere. Yellow colors on these charts indicate warming stratospheric temperatures, blue, colder stratospheric temperatures. What I like to look at is the shape of these solid white lines here, these height lines. When these height lines are more circular in nature, more circular or symmetrical, that means we have a stronger stratospheric polar vortex. Whenever these white solid geopotential height lines stretch out, become more elongated, that tells me that we're looking at a potential stretching of the polar vortex. So let's take a look at things here today. Currently in the upper left, notice we have a general circular shape here to the center of the polar vortex over the North Pole, and the shape of these other white solid height lines, geopotential height lines, not too elongated, mainly circular in nature. So we have a slightly strengthening polar vortex right now over the Arctic area. This is the forecast for Halloween, 31 October in the upper right. Again, notice this where the polar vortex is positioned right here, the center of it, more circular shaped of these white geopotential height lines. See that? They're more circular shaped. That indicates that we can still continue to see a strengthening vortex. And then for November here at the bottom, this starts to get a little more stretched though, right? Are you noticing the stretching a little bit more with these white solid height lines here? So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I was looking at a forecast out to around 11, 12 November, and it did look like the vortex was more of a stretching vortex at that point. Let's now look at the latest European 500 millibar geopotential heights and the anomalies. Green coloring, below normal height anomalies, brown, light brown, and the maroon or the reddish colors, orange colors indicate higher than normal heights at 500 millibars in the atmosphere, the mid-levels of the atmosphere. So we see troughing generally from the Bering Sea right onto the Pacific Northwest of the United States. They've been getting an awful lot of rain across the Pacific Northwest in the last couple of days. Seattle down to Portland. In fact, I was seeing reports of an atmospheric river, and there's a scale for that, strong atmospheric river scale. A lot of rain and higher elevation mountain snows across Washington state there this past few days. We do see a weak close low and troughing from Arkansas down through Louisiana. We see the strong upper level ridging north of that trough, generally from Minnesota, Wisconsin, northward in towards Hudson Bay, Canada. And then we see a closed upper level low off the coast of Maine with a trough axis extending from the New England coast down to the mid-Atlantic coastline right around Virginia. Over on the upper right, we see the forecast, 500 millibar height anomaly forecast for 30th of October. We see a deep closed upper level low across the eastern Aleutian Islands with the trough axis extending across the northeastern Pacific. We do see more of the brighter orange colors now across the western U.S., indicating some height rises, upper level height rises in association with ridging. So conditions will get drier with this scenario by the 30th of October, this Thursday, across the Pacific Northwest. We do see ridging also across Colorado into Nebraska and the Dakotas, and we see a closed upper level high across southeastern Canada. Beneath all of these strong above normal heights across eastern and southeastern Canada, we see a closed upper level low over Tennessee and northern Alabama, with the trough axis extending down toward the Gulf of America. Bottom left shows the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast for the European ensemble system here for 2 November, showing continued troughing in the northeastern Pacific. We definitely don't see a negative EPO, do we? Because if we had a negative EPO, we would have upper level ridging up here in orange colors in the Gulf of Alaska, and we'd have green colors south of that at lower latitudes. Instead, we got a positive EPO, right? We talked about the positive EPO. We got a generally we got lower than normal heights across the Gulf of Alaska. We got above normal heights south of it across the eastern Pacific. So there you go. This is a great example of a positive EPO right here. We do see upper level ridging extending in from the southeastern Pacific into California, Nevada, Utah. We do see a deep trough, the green colors and blue colors across the Ohio Valley to the Mid-Atlantic and New England. And then finally, over here on the right-hand side, we have our forecast for 5 November, showing troughing continuing across the Gulf of Alaska, right on into the northeastern Pacific, south the Aleutian Islands. So again, this is more of a favorable signature for a positive EPO, lower heights over higher heights. We see upper level ridging across the western U.S. by next Wednesday, the 5th of November. And then we see a major troughing from Canadian Maritimes down through New England, down to the Mid-Atlantic in the green coloring here. So my final thoughts on today's video, the teleconnections discussion for this week. MJO is more active in phase 5. It's entering phase 5 now. We do expect the MJO to rotate into the null, more non-impactful phase, but it'll be really brief, maybe a day or two in the null phase, before re-emerging back into phase 6. And that is expected to be the trend into middle November. La Nina conditions are in place across the tropical Central Pacific. Our latest daily SOI index value is positive 23.23, and we're seeing below average sea surface temperatures according to CDAS at minus 1.06 degrees Celsius in the Nino 3.4 region. Sea surface temperature anomalies, we see warmer than normal water across the northwestern and north central Pacific Ocean, cooler than normal waters located across the central equatorial tropical Pacific, as well as the northwestern Pacific and parts of the Gulf of Alaska. You know, with a lot of storm activity and troughing in the northeastern Gulf, or northeastern Pacific and the Gulf of Alaska, it's not shocking that we're starting to see the waters cooling down up in that area. Models are indicating a negative Arctic oscillation or AO phase from the 29th of October to the 3 November. Then the AO trending more neutral to slightly positive beyond that through 12 November. Now, what does a negative phase mean? It means cooler than average temperatures across the eastern U.S. If we go to neutral AO phase, that favors near average temperatures, more of a zonal west to east jet stream. And then with a positive phase, the AO, that tends to favor above average temps across the eastern U.S. Models are indicating a negative North Atlantic oscillation NAO phase from 30 October to 3 November. Then we go neutral to slightly positive from 3 to 12 November with the NAO. Now, the negative phase, the NAO, favors cooler than average temps across the eastern U.S. with a blocking upper level ridge across the northwest Atlantic. Neutral phase of the NAO would favor near average temps across the eastern U.S. and a lack of blocking. And then a positive phase, the NAO, favors above average temps across the eastern U.S. Looking at the models and what they're indicating for the PNA, indicating a positive PNA through 3 November, then a neutral to slightly positive PNA through 12 November, from 3 to 12 November, more slightly positive, not as strongly positive, and even some neutral times there. Negative PNA would favor, well, let's just do this. Since we don't have a negative PNA, let's just talk about the others. A neutral PNA indicates highly zonal west to east jet stream and quickly moving upper air disturbances, while a positive PNA that we're expected to see through the 3rd of November, that favors cooler than normal temperatures for the eastern U.S., troughing in the east, warmer than normal temperatures for the western U.S., and ridging out there. Models are indicating a positive to occasionally neutral eastern Pacific oscillation through 12 November. Now, the positive EPO favors an upper level trough there across Alaska, the northeastern Pacific, and the Bering Sea, with a downstream ridge and warmer than average temps from northern plains to the east coast. A negative EPO favors colder than average temperatures from the northern plains to the east coast. And then models are indicating a slowly strengthening stratospheric polar vortex over the North Pole. Longer range indications do show, however, a stretching stratospheric polar vortex around 11 to 12 November. Now, are these models something we could latch onto at this point? Probably not. But if the trends continue, right? If the trends continue for a stretching stratospheric polar vortex by mid-November, if they continue those trends in the coming days, then that's something we want to keep an eye on. My overall assessment then for the eastern United States, we're basically looking at the MJO into phase 5. That favors cooler than average temps across the mid-Atlantic and eastern U.S., like we're seeing right now. Transitioning, the MJO is forecast to transition, however, to the null phase, non-impactful phase, then phase 6. That phase 6 kind of whittles away the cooler than average temps in the east and mid-Atlantic. So we'll keep an eye on that. We could see a transition to slightly milder temperatures around the 10th of November. A cooler than average temperature period is expected in the short term between the 30th of October and 3 November. We have a lot going for us in this period with teleconnections for cooler temps in the eastern U.S. We have a negative AO, we have a negative NAO. They both favor below normal temperatures in the eastern U.S. And then we see the NAO and the AO and the NAO transitioning to neutral to slightly positive after the 3rd of November. The PNA will be strongly positive through 3 November. That's another factor. I mean, we got three things here in the teleconnections today favoring cooler than average temps in the east. We have the negative AO, we'll have the negative NAO, and we have a positive PNA. So with a positive PNA, that's going to favor upper level ridging and milder temps across the western U.S. through the 3rd of November, as well as into parts of western Canada. We'll see an upper level trough and cooler than normal temps across the eastern U.S. Now, the PNA is forecast to transition to neutral to slightly positive through the 12th of November. And then we do have that weak La Nina in place. The stratospheric polar vortex continues slow strengthening over the North Pole. And again, this is what we'll be watching. Indications are for the vortex that may stretch around 11 to 12 November. Again, we're well out in time on this. We're 2 weeks out. So continue to check back here what the latest is on the polar vortex. All right, that wraps up my teleconnections discussion for this week. I'm hoping to get a couple special videos out this week in addition to the daily forecast. I'm hoping to get put together a presentation on past Halloweens and the weather, kind of just show you what it's looked like in the past compared to what it's forecast to be this Halloween. I also am going to take a closer look at the Hampton Roads weather in the fall time period, specifically October. I'm going back to take a look at past Octobers and how what I find interesting right now is how persistently cooler these temperatures have been, running below average for such an extended period of time across Hampton Roads. And that's not normal for our area here. So I'm taking a look at the Octobers of the past and the temperatures and seeing how, what were the stretches of the cool temperatures? What do the following winters hold after those cooler stretches in October? All right, that wraps it up, everybody. I appreciate everybody subscribing to my YouTube channel. I certainly hope you learned something. I hope these videos are educational. I don't just tell you what it's doing. I try to explain what it means, and I hope that you understand more after the videos. That's all I got for now, everybody. And until next time, take care and God bless everyone.